Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 65 of the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Fuzzrocious Pedals. Go to the website fuzzrociouspedals.com and check out their selection of guitar and bass effects pedals. Their clientele list is super impressive with bands like Converge, Queens of the Stone Age, Russian Circles, many friends of the podcast. So definitely go check them out and tell them that the podcast sent you. In this episode, I talked to David Davidson of the band Revocation. We talk about their new album, The Outer Ones, coming out in September. We talk about their tour dates. We talk about what inspires him, like what music he listens to and what books he reads. We talk a little bit about his fascination with cooking, and being that he's in a death metal band, we ended up talking about death quite a bit. It was great catching up with him, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Cheers. Welcome, everyone, to the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. I'm here with David Davidson of the band Revocation. What's up, brother?
What's up?
How you doing today?
Doing good. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Doing all right. I was going to go to E3 for a second day in a row and was not able to.
Nice. How was E3? How was the first day?
It was great, man. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of, just a lot of electronics blasting in your face, plus a lot of people, a lot of different smells, a lot of interesting people too, man. Everybody just looks at your badge to see if you're anybody. It's kind of like NAMM,
right?
So what's up, dude? You guys wrapped up the new album recording?
Yes, yeah, we finished that up a few months back. And we've just been kind of waiting for it to be unleashed upon the masses.
I see. I see here online September 28. Is that accurate?
Yep. That's the release date. We've got a whole tour planned around that as well.
You're headlining, right?
Yes. Yeah. It'll be our first headliner in a little bit. We actually didn't get the chance to do a proper headline tour, full tour on Great As Our Sin, because we just kept getting so many good support offers. We're happy to be hitting the road with this great lineup.
I'm excited. You got some West Coast dates. I get to hang out with some of my favorite people.
Oh, yeah. We got a whole bunch of dates on the West Coast, so it should be cool.
Sorry. Do we have a name for the new album yet, or no?
Yeah, the record's called The Outer Ones.
The Outer Ones. Is there a theme to it, like lyrically or something?
Yeah, it's very Lovecraftian. I would say there's definitely a cosmic horror element. Once the album artwork is revealed, I think people will get a better kind of idea for the concept and whatnot. That'll be coming, I think, in July. Not every song is inspired by Lovecraft's writings, but a bunch of them on the record are, and then songs that aren't, I guess, they could have a Lovecraftian nature to them as well. Like I said, there was one song where it's kind of like a story that I just sort of made up on my own, something that I had kicking around in my head that could be maybe considered sort of Lovecraft inspired or whatever. So, it's going to be cool. It'll be our most death metal release to date.
Really? Okay. All right. I figured because I rocked Great As Our Sin for like a year straight, nonstop every day, and it was like, honestly, to be fair with you, it's the first album that actually, I found out about you guys through Brett. So I hadn't heard you before. I met Brett in Virginia, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm in a band," and I was like, "Oh shit." And that album was the one that grabbed me completely, like just hooked. And I figured it would make when you go back and listen to some of the older albums, they're a little more death metal, less melodic, I guess. Right. So I figured your progression would be more melodic, but you're saying it went the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always like to do the opposite of what's sort of expected of us in some ways. I think the trend, for bands is to once you sort of start adding more elements of melodicism to kind of continue on down that road. So with this one, we kind of wanted to double down on the death metal elements of our style. I mean, to me, Great Is Our Sin definitely had a very strong death metal element. I think
sure, yeah.
Most of our records do. But yeah, I think whether it was the subject matter or just the music, there weren't any real spots in the record that were speaking to me that like were crying out for like melodic vocals. So yeah, we just kind of decided just to double down on the death metal, and then as a side note to that, I have a new band that I'm starting up that's going to be all singing. So like I can kind of scratch that itch for melodic vocals with that band, because there's not going to be any screaming in that band whatsoever. So at least not on the first record that we're going to be putting out. So
is the music itself going to be a little more toned down, or is it still going to be metal but with melodic singing?
I don't know if toned down is the word. I mean, it feels kind of like, I guess there's a metal edge to it. It reminds me of like a really kind of prog, sort of dissonant Alice in Chains or something like that. Like we initially started the band, and sort of sounding like Virus was kind of our main goal. Virus from Norway, I believe. Yeah. And from there, it just kind of developed and morphed and mutated. So there's definitely some avant-garde elements. It almost sounds jazzy at times. But there's definitely a hard edge to it that one might consider metal. But maybe it's just like got a weird amalgamation of like prog rock and some avant-garde elements or something.
Interesting, dude. I'm curious to hear that once you get it, up and going.
Yeah.
You don't have any like social media stuff for it now already, or no?
Yeah, we're basically just kind of finishing up writing for it, and from there we're going to be looking for to round it out with the other members and figure out a name and all that kind of fun stuff.
Very cool, very cool. So going back to what you were saying about Lovecraftian, I mean, I have a Revocation shirt that has Cthulhu on it, so that's obviously a point of interest. It's like, where does that stem from? Like from your childhood, or is that something you recently, like in the last 10 years, picked up or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back to like some of our very first records, there's songs inspired by Lovecraft. We had Reanimaniac on Existence is Futile. Lovecraft is just sort of the godfather of that sci-fi horror genre, right? I mean, sure there were sci-fi writers before him, but none had the scope that he had. He really kind of created a universe of horror, right? Whereas before it was maybe like a ghost story or like, some kind of nebulous alien thing that other writers had touched on. But he created this whole mythos with like multiple deities across multiple dimensions, and they were all kind of tied together loosely in this weird sort of way. So I guess I really appreciated that. And I also just appreciated his writing style. Sometimes he can be very descriptive, right? I mean, talking about what the thing smelled like, or the sort of effervescence of this other thing and how it filled the room. And other times it could be intentionally vague. Azathoth is too horrible to even be described, right? If you were to try to describe it, you would go insane from the madness of what this creature is, right? So I appreciated that he could sort of let the reader's own imagination kind of fill in the blanks and make that almost even more terrifying by being not so descriptive at times.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. It does. It's an appeal that people like yourself and I have, and a lot of people do too, but I guess people that gravitate towards metal and more of, darker elements of life or extreme elements of life, that they find his writing that interesting, because it does generate a sense of despair sometimes when you read his work. And it's like, I don't know why I want that. Maybe it's because, life isn't really that bad. I'm still alive and breathing. So so I guess I want to get some taste of the extreme. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
There's a Lovecraft quote that I really love, and he says, the oldest... what's the quote? It's like the oldest emotion of mankind is fear, and the strongest type of fear is fear of the unknown, right? So I think he really kind of, plays upon that, right? I mean, there's certain things that maybe are lurking behind our perception and our knowledge that, are as old as time itself, and that kind of concept is I don't know, super intriguing. I also like that, all great writers that tell stories, his allegories are kind of a critique of humans, right? That they're at the center of a lot of his stories is like a human being trying to meddle with forces beyond their control, right? They're trying to summon something, to gain power or knowledge or wealth or whatever, and in doing so, it becomes their ruin. So I think it's sort of a cool reflection on society, how human beings are constantly trying to sort of meddle with forces beyond their control, and oftentimes there's unintended consequences of that, sometimes very dire consequences.
Yeah, and I've noticed in your lyrics too, you definitely have a similarity in terms of writing. It's very, like, you're telling a story. It's not like, oh, my parents hate me and my girlfriend left me. No, like, you guys are talking about, profound emolgus and shit like that. Like, it's pretty awesome,
Thank you. Yeah, I try to be poetic with my writing, and I think with metal, sometimes the lyrics are more of an afterthought. It's more just about like the abrasiveness of the vocals. For me, I spend so much time on the music that I don't want the lyrics to just be this sort of throwaway thing. I want there to be more thought behind it. And I think it just makes for a better piece of art at the end of the day if you can kind of tie in everything that it'll just make for a stronger statement.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, I used to write lyrics and sing in a band, so I understand that feeling of a lot of times metal bands, people don't pay attention to the vocals, At least, like, they'll know the melody and shit, but they won't know what it's about. Like, right. even some of my band members, like, we were in the band together, and they're just like, what are you singing about, dude? It's like, I gave you the lyrics, fucking check them out. But yeah, a lot of people do that. They're listening to the technicality of the, instrumentation. They're not really paying attention to words, I guess. And when you're screaming too, people tend to tune out. They're like, oh, he's just yelling. They don't really, they don't want to focus on whatever it is you're yelling about. But also, some of the bands, I would assume that you're inspired by some of the, like Iron Maiden or, Metallica, old school, the original Master of Puppets and shit like that. And even more so, like, I don't know, what would you say is your biggest inspiration musically growing up?
Growing up, I mean, in the metal realm, probably Pantera, just because they were such a kind of a gateway drug, right? I look at the old posters and stuff like that, and each dude would be wearing a different band shirt or whatever, and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna check out like Mayhem now," because Phil Anselmo is like wearing a Mayhem shirt or whatever. It was just being like a kid, like sort of going down rabbit hole. So they, first of all, Dime's guitar playing was just so undeniable, right? So that grabbed me right away. But yeah, like I said, they were one of those bands that like they took out like I Hate God and Morbid Angel on tour and shit like that. Really cool bands from the underground that sort of exposed me to all these other subgenres. So yeah, I guess sort of across the board, both musically and also for what they kind of did for the underground scene would be Pantera.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned like Morbid Angel and stuff like that. Like that was kind of the point I was trying to make, that some of these bands like Morbid Angel have very poetic or storytelling style lyrics, and then I end up asking you like, what's your biggest? And then Pantera is more like, some of the songs are a story, but a lot of them are just like it's Phil.
Right.
It's Phil being Phil, being tough guy, and let's get whiskey and weed in our system, and
right.
But see, that's what I grew up on too, man. I grew up on Pantera, fucking raging in Homestead, Florida, with all the dudes down there.
Yeah. For me, hearing Dimes playing was what really drew me in. I haven't really heard guitar playing like that, I don't think. But before then, like Guns N' Roses was my hugest influence. I still love Guns N' Roses. I still love Slash. I think he's just an incredible guitar player, super lyrical. Right, wrote some of the best rock songs of all time.
Super fearless, playing solos on a train rail and the tip of a mountain about to collapse or whatever. I don't know.
It's sick, right? I mean, who doesn't watch that and want to grow up to be ripping some solo outside a weird church in the desert,
Yeah.
But with Dime, I mean, I remember I saw the music video for Walk, and when he does that slide lick when he's in the middle of that solo, it just kind of blew me away. And of course, got all their records and stuff like that, and each solo was better than the last, and I just kind of soaked it all up and really was inspired by his playing, just super fluid. He just had such a style.
Yeah, dude. For me, it's the solo in Domination, where it's that shit sounds so evil that it just kind of changed my path in music. I need to discover more evil shit like that.
Right.
It's so funny, dude. Now that we're talking about shredding and whatnot, this past NAMM, I would say the highlight of my NAMM experience was hanging out with you and watching you interact with that security guard. That was fantastic, dude.
I don't remember.
You remember
that?
So you sat down. You went to play one of the special guitars around the wall. Was it Fender?
Oh, Fender.
Yeah, Fender. Right.
Yeah.
And you sat there, and the dude was like, "So what do you do for Fender, man?" And you're like, "I fucking shred all day." I was like, "That's the best answer I've ever heard in my life."
I hope you could tell I was kidding.
No, yeah, he did. I think so.
Yeah,
You guys laughed it off, but dude, it was so funny to me that I'm like, damn, that's the way to go. That's the way you answer questions. Fuck it. What do you do at Fender? I shred. Oh man. So going back a little bit to Great Is Our Sin, I wanted to ask you a little bit. When was it that Brett came on board? He came on board with Deathless.
Before then, he came on board with the Toronto Genesis EP.
Oh, okay. I thought it was with Deathless. I forgot, but how did you guys meet? How did that all happen? Was it just Richmond stuff? Everybody's there hanging out.
No, I met him when he was on tour with the Binary Code. So it was our very first tour ever, a full U.S. tour. It was called Metal is Art. Hypnos was headlining, and it was us and Binary Code. And yeah, Binary Code are a band from Jersey, and him and Todd were filling in on guitar and bass, and yeah, we just really hit it off. The tour was pretty abysmal. It was right before anyone really knew us or apparently any of the bands on the tour. So the turnouts were just weak as hell, but we were all so stoked, and it was just so fun to be on the road. So doing that just shot tour with those guys, and just how upbeat they were and stoked every day just to be playing in front of 5 people. I mean, some of the shows were better than that, but I mean, it was pretty thin the whole way through, and I was like, man, these guys have such good morale. Their positivity is just kind of contagious, so you want to hang out with them.
Hell yeah, dude! Ever since I met those guys, everyone over there too, it was just a very good vibe.
Yeah,
and
a bass player too. I mean, that didn't go unnoticed either. I mean, watching him rip it every night. He's got great stage presence. So when we were in need of a new bass player, he was actually the first guy that we called.
Nice. Yeah, I like his work with East of the Wall and everything. I mean, I had been paying attention for a while, but I didn't even when we met, I didn't recognize him at all. My buddy was the one that nudged me. He's like, "That's the dude from Revocation." I'm like, I don't know who that is either, but right. Sounds cool. Let's do it. Let's find out. Right. And that's when I found out about the band. And like I said, I started with Great Is Our Sin and worked my way back. But Great Is Our Sin, I guess, since it was the first one I heard, really dragged me in. That's now my go-to, regardless of what you've done before. The other stuff is great too, but to me, that's whether or not everyone else considers it your best work. That to me is your best work.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, even in the way you guys included some of the vocal melodies, like we were saying, the singing parts, it was singing, but it was, I don't know how to explain it, metal-ish, kind of tough guy singing. There's raspiness to it.
Yeah, I mean, when I sing, it's usually underneath or over on top of a heavier style riff. So I like to project and really kind of belt it out and give it that kind of anthemic quality. I mean, for me, as far as singing in metal goes, I I mean, Metallica, right? I mean, those early Metallica records when James Hetfield was just so full of like piss and vinegar and like just like belting it out. So that's sort of what I try to emulate. There might be other parts where maybe I'm channeling like a bit of like a Gojira vibe or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah,
more subdued, maybe like more intronaut way, like when they do some of their moody stuff. On like I guess on like Profane and Vulgus, for example, when it has the clean part. So I think it all depends on the part for me. As I was sort of saying earlier with the new record, not a lot of parts were speaking to me as far as like hearing melodic vocals. I try to let the music inform me as to like what I should be laying down, and that goes for vocals, that goes for melodies or solos on top of riffs. Even just like overall arrangements, it's like, what does this part need here? And I try to listen to the song and get the info that I need from that, rather than just be like, oh, I want to just sort of force this square peg into a round hole, like just because, right?
Right, yeah, right, because it needs to have singing now or something. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Do you find it important, or in your life, do you find yourself trying to explain metal to certain people, like the type of metal that you guys are doing, which when you break it down to like sheet music, could be classical music. You know what I mean? Like there's movement to it. There's there's structure. The way that it's structured reminds me a lot of like classical compositions, and a lot of metal does that. A lot of a specific. If you want to get into the specifics with symphonic metal, but I'm not even talking about that. I mean like AJ, the Human Abstract. His writing was very like classical music. It was like Mozart stuff, Beethoven style.
Right.
And you guys have a similarity with that. Like, do you bother trying to like sit someone down, like, hey, try to break this down? Like, I know it's a lot. I know it's loud. I know there's screaming, but listen, to the layers of it, and maybe that way they can get into it.
No. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not gonna. If someone's not into metal, like, I'm not gonna like sit them down with like the sheet music for Deathless to like try to like win them over. You know what I mean? Like, if they're into it, they're into it. I mean, I think all I can do is try to sort of move the needle a bit with our on the barometer of like pushing the boundaries of what metal can do. So hopefully it'll open up. More listeners, or open up the current listeners' ears a bit more to checking out like a different style, because we're kind of hard to fit into a particular box, right? Like we don't really, I don't think we really sound like anybody else. We're kind of doing our own things, which is sort of a blessing and a curse in some ways, because I think some people, like maybe your casual metal listener, might want to hear like a specific kind of song structure or whatever, or a specific approach. Yeah, and like we're kind of doing our own thing, and trying to push the boundaries a bit more, and write music sort of for ourselves first and foremost. So that can be tough, but luckily I think our fan base is really open-minded and always sort of craves hearing new sounds, right? So that's what we try to do with each release. We don't want to say like, oh, this song was a hit, so we need to do this again and like write a whole record, based off of like every song that's like sounds like this. I can look back at our catalog and I can be proud of everything we've done, but at the same time, I want to forge ahead. I mean, to me, I think one of the best sort of like thrash songs we've ever written, like anthemic thrash songs, would be like No Funeral. I can still listen back to that song and be like, oh, it was like a really cool, catchy song. It had a big chorus, melodic, had almost like a DD kind of thrash vibe or whatever. But like at the same time, it's like, all right, cool, we did that, and now I want to kind of move on and like try something else. Try to push the boundaries in like a different direction. Just so it stays interesting for us, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that band that, like, is still playing, like, the only songs people remember us by are, like, the songs we put out 10 years ago, right? I want our newest stuff to be the most intriguing, or to what gets people most amped up, which is awesome, because I hear from so many people that, like, oh, Great As Your Sin was my favorite one, and, before that I heard, oh, Deathless has been my favorite release, so it's kind of like we try to one-up ourselves each time, and, you're always going to have the fans that the demo was their favorite thing that we ever did or whatever, but for me, I'm consistently inspired by the newest music that we put out, and so far that's been working for us. That's our formula, I guess, is to challenge ourselves.
Is there anything that you're listening to that's kind of guiding, like not guiding, but just so that you know what else is out there, so you can push beyond it, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of mainly listen to jazz now. To be honest, I listen to a lot of metal still, but a lot of that's like kind of more nostalgic. Like I'm going back to like different records and stuff like that. Even if they're kind of more obscure, like, oh yeah, I went through like a big, brutal death metal phase. Like let me brush off my old CDs from that. Like, oh cool, this is Severed Savior record or whatever. Like haven't listened to that in a while, so I'll still go back and listen to bands like Whippet. But as far as like music that I'm listening to now, it's not even newer albums. A lot of times it's like older stuff. Like I was listening to like John Coltrane Quartet live at the Village Vanguard last night before bed. I love classical music, so I love listening to classical composers, and obviously like their take on music is in some ways similar to metal since it's through composed, but obviously the orchestration's much grander, and they're just brilliant minds. So if I can listen to things that really inspire me and make me think outside the box, that's what I try to aim for.
That's good.
Like I said, there's been some great releases this last year. Just to name a couple, like the new Suffering Hour record is awesome. They're from Minneapolis. The newest Hideki Shidran record is really cool. The newest Deathspell EP was really awesome. So there's a lot of bands that are pushing the genre in a lot of cool directions, and generally that's what I kind of gravitate towards as far as the metal genre is concerned. Is bands that are really kind of doing something different.
Yeah, and I feel like there is a lot more creative, aggressive music coming out. But I have heard from a lot of other musicians that they're like, I don't like to listen to anything newer because then I don't want to end up getting influenced in a way, like it gets stuck in your head, and then when you're writing, you kind of throw something down that's similar or whatever, and you want to keep it original. So I appreciate that you're actually going back and listening to, jazz and stuff like that, because I took 2 years of that in high school, of jazz history and education, because I loved it. I loved just the way it all, from the beginning all the way to when it became crazy Latin fusion, Chick Corea stuff. And, I'm also Cuban, so I have that little Latin jazz vibe in my life that there's no way to get away from it.
Yeah. You ever listen to Gonzalo Rubalcaba?
Who?
Check out Gonzalo Rubalcaba. He's a Latin jazz piano player. He's like this total monster.
I'll check it out. Yeah, I love Latin jazz. I spend most of my day when I'm out in the car. K jazz out here in LA is fantastic.
Yeah.
All day. Just let it ride, and I don't know. I guess the rhythm was gonna get me, as Gloria Estefan said. It got me. I can't deny my love for that stuff.
Yeah, we certainly, I think, have some, maybe Latin-inspired rhythms on certain, drum beats and stuff like that. It's always cool to play with those types of rhythms because they're just super syncopated. Get a certain groove to them, a certain bounce. And when you pair it with really heavy riffs, it can be kind of an interesting combo. So we've experimented with a little bit of that in the past, for sure.
Yeah. Are you a fan at all of I feel like there's more and more releases coming out in different bands with like super heavy death metal elements, but with a female singer doing like very haunting style vocals, kind of like Oathbreaker or what do you call this one? I don't know how to pronounce it. The MYR. Mjorker, yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on that kind of genre that's been kind of growing lately?
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, I'm not super familiar with I know the names, and I think we played with Oathbreaker at a festival, but I'm not actually super familiar with their music. A group that I really like, or artists, I should say, is Chelsea Wolfe.
She's great, yeah.
I love Chelsea Wolfe. Her music is so haunting. I guess you could call it metal, even though, some of it almost reminds me of like a haunting, like Joni Mitchell or something like that.
Yeah, Yeah, a lot of people associate her with metal, but
yeah,
the music's not all metal. Like there's a
yes,
lot of
the records have more like of a harder kind of industrial metal edge or whatever. But yeah, I mean her earlier stuff, just sounds kind of weird. Some of her stuff with just her and acoustic guitar is really beautiful. But she obviously has kind of more of a goth image or whatever, and some of the I know a lot of metal people that like her, so there's some kind of crossover there. She has kind of like a cult, a cult vibe or witchy kind of vibe that's sort of cool. But yeah, her voice is great, super haunting. I mean, I think it's great that there's more and more ladies in metal now.
I like that it's being accepted, that people are actually into it, like it's not just some kind of thing that's happening and no one cares,
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I think the metal genre should be more inclusive, and open. So, I mean, for the longest time, I mean, brutal death metal and stuff like that, it wasn't necessarily woman-friendly when you look at some of the song titles and stuff like that.
Some Cannibal Corpse songs.
It's cool that there's more and more. I think just more people in general are getting into metal, which is kind of cool. I think it's one of those. It's been sort of simmering in the underground for a while, but now it seems like old school death metal is like really making a comeback. Just sort of metal across the board seems to be popping off, so it's great.
It seems to be in a good place. I think I'm happy. I'm stoked to where it's going. But yeah, I saw Chelsea Wolfe actually with Queens of Stone Age, which I felt was very fitting.
Yeah,
that was a good tour. And then I saw her at Psycho Las Vegas, and I had taken some edibles, and I had to leave the room. I couldn't handle it. The vibe was too strong.
Too intense.
Too much power coming from that stage. I was like, no, I gotta go. It's crazy how that kind of music has been affecting me more and more as I've been getting older. Like the new Yob record. I don't know if you've heard it at all, but
I haven't, but I heard it's good.
Dude, like it hurts me to hear it.
Yeah.
Like I'm listening to it and I feel the pain of what he's projecting, and for some reason or another, I'm really connecting to that as well. And I gotta turn it off. Like I'm like, nah, that's too much. I don't know what it is, man.
It's really scary,
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, they're doing a good job of putting out that emotion, and there's a lot of industries that do so. Like there's a lot of video games that kind of like Last of Us. I don't know if you ever played that game, but the first 15 minutes of that game, I was in tears, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? It's a video game. I'm not supposed to be crying. Why am I not shooting things and blowing things up? Like, why am I thinking and deep diving into my own cerebrum?
That's great. I mean, I think entertainment, when you can marry it with deeper emotional content, it just makes for a better experience overall.
Do you play video games at all, or are you not a gamer?
I used to. I haven't played video games in so long, but I mean, of course, I grew up with Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and playing Turtles in Time and playing Contra.
Nice.
I loved all of those games where there was a side scroller or whatever. I got into World of Warcraft for a hot minute. Was definitely loving that. It's I was a fan of the Warcraft series before it was the World of Warcraft. The regular Warcraft, but. So I really like that. I love the whole expansiveness of the game. But then I kind of got to a point where I'm like, all right, I guess I could be playing guitar while I'm doing this sort of thing, and it was one of those choices where I just kind of gave it all up just to focus on music more. But it's super fun. I mean, I totally understand why people love video games. Like Dan plays the hell out of video games on tour and stuff like that.
Nice. There's certain games like I bought this one called Rocksmith, where you hook up an actual guitar and then you learn how to play guitar and learn people's songs. I guess learn how to cover a bunch of songs with an actual guitar.
Oh, cool.
And it actually works pretty well. I was fucking around with it for a while, and then before I knew it, I'm like, oh, look at that! I'm moving around more seamlessly without even thinking about it. So I think they should do more stuff like that. Huh?
You're a regular rocksmith.
Oh, right. No, but I think they should do more stuff like that. Video games that can be educational if they're done right. You know what I mean? And it doesn't just need to be mind-numbing. Even though the mind-numbing part is the appeal in the first place. You're like, I'm tired and stressed from work. I need something, to escape.
Right. Well,
and that's movies, too, and books, all kinds of entertainment, obviously.
My friend once said, talking about video games, he's like, some people like to unwind with a bottle of scotch after work. I like to unwind with an hour's worth of video games. Like, what's worse, right? So, I mean, I totally get that, like, there is that need to just sort of decompress and unwind, and just sort of, go into this other world. So I appreciate that. And, it's even video games that are just sort of quote-unquote, like, mind-numbing or whatever, they still have some cool value to them. Like, I mean, I always love playing Super Mario Brothers. I mean, even just, like, the music is cool. I mean, a lot of the soundtracks to those video games, I think, maybe got me into music before I even was really, maybe before even, like, the radio did, right? The certain games, like, you hear those melodies in your head, like, just being a kid for hours, and who can say how it subconsciously affects you? And a lot of those video game composers, I mean, when they were just working with, like, MIDI and stuff like that, really created some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if you've gone back recently and listened to some of that, but there's some straight-up intense metal going on in, like, Contra and early Castlevania. You're like, what?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. I was going to say, so do you have any other hobbies since you don't video game, or are you just playing guitar all the time? I know. Wait. I'm sorry. You like cooking.
I do. Yeah, I enjoy
cooking. You did a cooking thing with was it in Metal Injection?
Yeah, with Chef Brian Tao. Yep.
Tell me about that experience, dude, because I love cooking too, and I love cooking shows. So when I saw you doing one, I'm like, holy shit, this is great.
Yeah, no, it's something that I enjoy doing. I'm a foodie, so cooking is always a treat. It was great being on that show, working with Chef Brian. We had like a little, it's like a competition thing or whatever. Or like I made a dish and he judged me, so I guess I was competing with myself. But yeah, it's something that's relaxing, I guess, and it's nice working with products that you know where they came from and stuff like that, and you can kind of season it to your liking. So I mean, I don't know. I love to eat, so good to know how to cook.
Yeah, man. I've always been fascinated with it. I mean, obviously, I had to learn to do it to survive, but then like I started watching the Iron Chefs and the Chopped and all those shows, and it really forced, especially Chopped. Actually, that was the one that was like, I always saw that show kind of like the stoners cooking show, like, what's in the basket? I don't know. I got grapes and maybe like some crackers. Like, what am I doing? So I found that to be like the poor musician's perfect TV show of like, make shit together, make shit happen. It inspires me. Right. So, I'm also that the whole Yob release thing that I was telling you, it kind of made me feel sad. I think I broke it all down to just too many of my heroes, kind of Anthony Bourdain, and a couple others that have been lost to suicide shit, and it sucks, man. I want people to talk more about it, like be more, because like I'll talk to people about shit like that, and they're like, "No, man, you're gonna bring down the vibe." It's like, no, man, let's fucking talk about it.
Yeah,
we keep losing people to it. There's obviously a fucking problem, and I don't want to start falling victim to it. Like if I'm listening to Yob, I don't want to get depressed and like, like I gotta turn this off because I'm thinking too much. So. Right. So, what are your thoughts? I mean, you like cooking, so obviously, I'm assuming you're familiar with Bourdain and probably look up to him as well, like I did.
Oh yeah, he was an incredible dude. Loved his shows. I loved his book, Kitchen Confidential. It's a great read. Obviously, he's got such a commanding voice, right, just in terms of the way he speaks. So in reading his book, it really sounds like he writes in the way he talks. So it sounds like he's like in the room talking to you. You can kind of hear it in your head, which is cool. And yeah, I think just what he did for like the restaurant industry and food culture in general, will make its mark for generations to come. He sort of exposed the seedy underbelly of the restaurant biz, but at the same time, embraced it in his own way. And obviously just being like a sort of world traveler that he was, he just had so much life experience, and I think he just kind of exuded that in all his interactions. It's not going to happen now, obviously, since his tragic passing, but he was one of those guys where it's like, if you could pick 5 people to sit down and have a beer with or whatever, just hang out with, I feel like he would definitely be on the list, because he just seemed like a cool dude to talk.
He was like a true punk rocker, man. That was the dude, Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that's happening. There's now people. There's people saying there's a conspiracy now. Alex Jones is talking shit that he got silenced, he got suicided or something because he was about to expose some kind of child molestation ring that he found. And it's like, come on, man, really? I mean, it's not hard to tell that dude was struggling with some mental demons. You could hear it in the way he spoke, and I felt that vibe from him anyway. And I not only do I feel it because I understand him, but I feel the same. It's hard to stay positive. There's so much shit going on, and I just feel that you look at a guy like that where everybody, he's got the life. You're traveling and you meet everyone and you eat amazing food and you're well known and people want to take pictures with you and shit like that. None of that fucking matters. You know what I mean? There's still something that was eating him alive. I don't think it was that he got murdered by.
Well, Alex Jones is obviously going to always try to find the conspiracy theory in anything, but it's tragic that he took his own life, and it's super sad, especially considering he's got a family and stuff like that. So
that's why this conspiracy has even got anyone interested in it, is because no one understands. They're like, he loved his wife and he had a great, or his girl, he had a family, and there's no way, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? But it does. I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, I think people can have sort of, just sort of multiple facets to their personality, right? And I think just because you put on a happy face in one element of your life, and maybe you are really truly happy in one, with certain aspects of your life, there could be that underlying depression, sadness there that just sort of can spiral out of control and lead to suicide sometimes, which is so tragic.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's a matter of there's more of it now, or there's just more exposure to it now?
I don't know. I mean, that would be something I'd probably have to see the data on. But as far as the perception, it seems like it's happening more, right? But we live in a digital age, right, where news stories can be shared in the blink of an eye. So it's probably one of those things where it was maybe always there, but there's just more visibility on it. But who knows? Maybe there's some element of our society, or whether it's prescription drugs, or there's so many different sort of X factors out there. That you can take into account, I guess, and sort of control for different variables. But it's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel that there is a difference in the society, as you were mentioning, and there's also this. Our entire culture now is kind of in a weird place. No one really knows what to do with themselves. People don't want to offend each other, but then they're offended about everything. It's kind of like everybody wants to pick a side and they don't know where to go. They're just kind of floating in the middle. And I think that is creating some depression issues in people, because their brains, there's no anchor. You know what I mean? There's nothing there for them. They're just some people don't even know what gender they are or what they identify with. You know what I mean? So it's a weird time. I don't think back in the 1920s people were having that much of a struggle trying to figure themselves out. I think it was more, it might have been a little bit misogynistic and terrible in certain aspects, but everybody seemed to have a direction that they wanted to go, at least progress. Hey, we need liberties and freedoms, and let's work towards that. And now I feel like we've gotten so much freedom that people are just kind of floating around. What? Now what?
Yeah, it's. I mean, look. I think back in the day, obviously, you didn't have all the choices that you have now, right? Like, if your dad was a cobbler, you were going to be a cobbler, right? And you were probably only going to live to be about 35, 40 anyway, with life expectancy and this and that. So as society has righted certain wrongs and as living conditions have gotten better, the sort of existential part of the human brain maybe has sort of come out more, and people have more time to grapple with elements of their personality or of sort of society in general, and like, how can we change it? So it's certainly interesting for sure. Just sort of looking at sort of the history, I guess, of thought and where we're at now with what people's perceptions are. I mean, certainly, I think we're the most polarized out of any generation there's ever been. I think there's a multitude of reasons for that, but obviously having media and the two-party system as we have it, at least in this country, adds to the polarization.
Yeah, for sure.
which is a big sort of hot button topic on everyone's minds nowadays. But yeah, there's just so many different I think facets to society now that maybe weren't as prevalent as they once were. For probably the fact that you were just sort of more concerned with not dying of like polio or something like that, right?
And even that, there's people that are like, I'm not going to take my vaccinations. And it's like, well, that's how you get smallpox.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Is that how do you want smallpox? Because, I mean...
I don't.
I know I don't. I know I have vaccinations in me, and I think I'm fine. I have everybody else's struggles. You know what I mean? I'm uniquely struggled because I have a vaccination in me. I actually, don't have smallpox, which is great. Because of that. That's a win. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, man. I used to be really into politics and like the whole gun-ho like revolution nonsense, and when I was younger, and I find myself more and more just distancing myself from the whole thing, even though like some people might see that negative, like, oh, we're in a tough time, you need to step up and do something. It's like, well, I'm done trying to do something. I did this 8 years ago or whatever when Bush was ruining the world. Like, you know what I mean? And now we have people that are going back like, oh, I miss Bush because he's all old and cute with his little, fucking poncho and he paints. Like, get the fuck out of here. That guy sucked.
Yeah, I know.
They all suck. Don't fucking make them, any of them, fucking, oh, I miss Bush. No, you don't. But yeah, anyway, I try to distance myself now. Like, I'm just trying. There's too much going on, dude. Every time I tune in to like Facebook just to see, it's like, oh, Kim Kardashian's at the White House. Like, okay, all right.
Living strange times.
Yeah, that's where I'm at now, and I think it's happening to a lot of people. And that's why he's still able to get away with whatever he's getting away with. It's just people are just tuned out. They're like, oh, I guess let's see what other crazy shit happens tomorrow. Like.
There's been a lot to deal with, that's for sure.
Yeah, you turn on the Twitter and it's like, it's always something. There's always something going on. It's like, oh, look, Roseanne is racist. Okay, cool. What else? Anthony Bourdain just killed himself. Great. What else? Like, what else is happening? And we've been dealing with this for a couple of years. Like, I remember I think 2016 was the year of who's dead this morning. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, Prince and Bowie and fucking Alan Rickman and all the, and people freak out about stuff like that, and they don't realize that it's just life, dude. We get old, people die, right?
Yeah. There's definitely that that element for sure. I think when you have like big celebrities that people look up to. Their deaths can affect a lot of people. Obviously, musicians or whatever, actors, just because they were something or a figure that people looked up to, or they almost feel like they had some sort of relationship with that person, even though they never met them or knew them. So I can understand grieving over the loss of someone who you perceive to have really known intimately, even if you haven't. But yeah, I mean, there's tragedies that happen all around the world every single day. I guess it's one of those things where you can't pay attention to all of them because then you kind of get like crisis fatigue, At a certain point, you have to live your own life and try to stay positive. And I guess that's really all you can do in this crazy-ass world.
That's right. Listen to some music or make some music, or make a weird internet voice talking show like we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, we've been going for like an hour. If you want to, 50 minutes. All right. If you want to wrap it up, I mean, I know you said you had lunch with someone.
Sure. Yeah.
So new album, September 28th.
Mm-hmm.
What was it called again?
The Outer Ones.
The Outer Ones. And tour, headlining tours coming up.
Yep.
What's the first date?
The first date is in Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have them in front of me either, but you got
on the I got it in front of me right here. Baltimore on the September 17th. It's the first show of the tour.
Okay. And it's like 3 months, right? Or 2 months?
No, it's about a month. I mean, we're going to be coming home, and then we're going to be doing a European headliner right after that, but that hasn't been announced yet. But, when all is said and done, it'll be about 2.5 months, but the U.S. tour initially is about a month long.
Very cool. Very cool, man. I'm looking forward to the release. Sorry if I got a little dark at the end, dude. It is part of life, and I feel that we should talk about stuff like that and maybe getting it out and having something for people to relate to and maybe like get some comfort in by talking about it,
Yeah, I think these are thoughts that we all grapple with. It's just a matter of how we all deal with them, and hopefully we can deal with them in a positive, productive way.
Well, I look forward to hearing the new album and releasing some anger in the pit during your show. So releasing some of this pent-up aggression from all this nonsense. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the fall, right? September?
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right, brother. Thanks for taking some time to talk to me today, guys. Follow Revocation. Follow Dave_Revocation on Twitter. You said you're available for classes now?
Yeah.
Time?
My Instagram is David Davidson. I'm taking on lessons for the summer. If anyone wants to holler at me. And yeah, just come to the tour. It's going to be great. Take up the new record whenever it comes out.
Fuck yeah. If you guys are listening, if you're a guitarist and you don't know Dave, you should really take a class with Dave. That dude shreds. That's all I'll say. All right, brother. Well, thanks for joining me. Cheers.
Thank you, man. Cheers.